All right, guys, welcome. So in this video or podcast episode, depending on where you're checking this out here, we're going to be talking about the simple path to $1 million in income, personal income for you, revenue for a business that you're trying to start, or whatever. This is really, really simple to do. So if you just follow this and you actually do what is shown on the plan here, you can hit whatever goal you want. It really doesn't matter. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you're probably going to want to go to kennycannonpodcast.com/YT and go on the YouTube channel to watch this video. And the reason why is because I'm actually drawing this out like on a Word document. So you're going to want to see that. And I'm not going to go to this link and get this for free if you put your email address in and your phone number and all that. I'm not going to do any of that because when you see this, any one of you can write this out on a piece of paper and it takes 5 seconds. It's nothing to give away, really. It's just, once you learn it, it's pretty simple to follow and you just write it down on a piece of paper. It's not a big deal. All right, so we're going to be focusing on action goals here, not necessarily income. Income doesn't matter. You could change that around as much as you want. As long as you get the formula right, you're going to know what actions you need to take to hit the income that you want to hit, and then that's all you focus on, and I'm going to show you exactly how to work that out. So for this example, this came from an audience member of mine who, when I did my 4 steps to guaranteed success, they wrote a comment saying, write out a plan or a process for $1 million. And I said, that's pretty simple because I've done that 100 times, 200 times for myself, my clients, everything else. It's not that hard to do. So I told them that my next video would be this. So our goal is $1 million. And that number can be anything. Like I said before, it could be $10,000, it could be $100,000, it could be whatever. We're going to be working out a yearly goal here, so make sure you set your yearly goal, whatever that may be. All right, so the first step we're going to do is we're going to write down the goal that we're trying to accomplish when it comes to finances. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to write down our average ticket. So really what that means is what you make every time you make a sale, right? So the reason why I write average ticket, I don't write commission, I don't write like revenue, because this applies to anybody, right? If you're selling to somebody else, if you're selling cars or houses or whatever, it's a commission. If you're doing business for yourself, it's, revenue or whatever. So it's different for everybody. So average ticket just basically is like a blanket statement, how much you make for every time you make a sale. All right. So for this example, because we're going to be using really easy numbers here just to show you how to do this, and then you're going to put your own numbers in and you're going to get a little bit of a different result, but the process is going to stay the same. So average ticket here is going to be $1,000 just to make the math really simple. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on how many sales we need to make in order to hit the goal that we're trying to achieve. So let's just put sales needed, right? That's going to be 1,000 sales to make at $1,000 a piece to make $1 million. Pretty simple, right? Next thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on how many pitches off we need in order to hit the 1,000 sales. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky because I'm going to put in here at 10%, right? So that's assuming that I'm going to close 10% of the people I talk to. You may close 30% of the people you talk to. Okay, so put that in there and figure out the calculation. Not that difficult, right? I'm just using easy math because I'm a high school dropout and I'm kind of dumb. So I'm using easy math here just to get the process down for you to show you how it works. Once you get the process down, you're going to figure out what you need to do to hit it. And then all you got to do is do that. It's really not complicated at all. Like I said, I'm a high school dropout. If it was complicated, I wouldn't be able to do it. It's not that complicated at all. And I've done this a lot for my businesses, and I've done it hundreds of times for consulting clients and coaching students all across the world. It's the same thing over and over again. So pitches off 10%. I'm going to close 10% of the people I talk to. That means I need to get 10,000 pitches off over the course of a year's time. Okay. Next thing we need to figure out is contacts. And I'm going to say 10% there as well. Now, again, that's just to keep the math simple. That number is going to be 100,000. I'm going to explain to you what that means in a second. So again, just to keep the math simple, I need 100,000 contacts over the course of a year to get 10,000 pitches off, to make 1,000 sales, to make on an average ticket of $1,000 to make $1 million in annual income or annual revenue or whatever. Okay. Now, if you contacts basically means how many dials do I have to make, or how many knocks do I have to do, or let's say you do business like I do, right? How many people do I have to get on a webinar at 10% to get 10,000 pitches, to get 10,000 people to show up, right? So that at 10% show up rate, I get 1,000 sales at $1,000 is $1 million, right? Contacts could be anything, but the rates, the percentages are going to change based off of what you do. So let's say you're a cold caller. That's what you do. You sell stuff over the telephone. If you get 30% of your leads on the telephone, like every time you dial the phone, 30% of the people pick up, they're decision makers, you're pitching them, right? If that's the case, well then change that number to 30%. Very simple, all right? If your closing ratio, when it says pitches off, if your closing ratio is 30%, change that number, and your numbers are going to go down. Okay, so now what we're going to do, now that we have 100,000, we're going to figure that out on a monthly basis. Okay, monthly. So what we need to do here is we need to contact on a monthly basis 8,333 people per month in order to hit our 100,000 goal. Okay, in order to get 10,000 pitches off, in order to get 1,000 sales, in order to get $1 million at $1,000 average ticket. Does that make sense? All right. Now, we have 8,000 contacts a month. Weekly, we have, I think it's 2,000 something. I think it's, I forget. I've done this like a million times. It's 2,083, I believe. 2,083 or something like that. Double check my math, but I think it's 2,083 per week that you have to do. And I know for a fact, daily, that it is 416 people a day. 416 people a day is what you need to contact in order to make $1 million a year. That's how you want to break it down, okay? You always want to work backwards. So we start at the $1 million goal or 100,000. Think about this. Let's say you want to make $100,000 a year and you have an average ticket of $1,000. Well, that means you only need to contact 42 people a day. Like any living human being with a mouth, eyes, and hands can contact 42 people a day. It's not that difficult to do. When I was in the stock business, we were making 800 calls a day. Mortgage business, probably 500 or something. It's really not that big of a deal to do, all right? It's pretty simple. But again, it takes discipline. It takes effort. It takes, a calendar where you're going to actually do it every single day. 416 might be intimidating to you. Well, guess what? On a 5-line auto dialer with leads pumped into it, it's not that hard at all. It's 6-7 hours of work. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to work that much. Okay, well, stay broke. I don't know what to tell you, right? So the bottom line is you have the number there, and it's based off of an action. It's not based off of getting lucky. It's not based off of every time I make a sale. It's not based off of any of those things. If these numbers stay true, right, this number is going to get you here. There's no doubt about it. Now, is it going to get you exactly $1 million on December 31st, 2019, 2020, whatever? No, not at all. Is it going to get you 1.1 on December 31st? Probably. Is it going to get you 950 on December 31st? Probably, right? So it's going to be in that range. I'm not saying it's going to hit exactly the number that you put down, but it's going to be in that range if you stay true here, okay? Now, the last thing I'll tell you is this. Again, you have to remember that these numbers are going to change based off of what you do. So if you're somebody who has no clue what your contacts percentage are or what your pitches off percentage, like your closing ratio is, you got to figure that stuff out. Like you have to know that. One of the things that I tell my people to do all the time is contacts, and then we do this. Watch. We'll do that, that, that. And then we'll just put this down like all the way down the page like this, right? That's actually supposed to be 5, I think. Oh, no, it is 5. Contacts, and then we'll have pitches off, and then we'll do the same thing, right? And then we'll have closed sales, right? And then we'll do that and that. So now at the end of the day, this person's going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like little tick marks, right? And then I'll do a cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cross. And then I'll put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pitches off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pitches off. And then I'll do 1 sale, right? So he knows 45 contacts, 10 pitches off, 1 sale, okay? And then he ends the day or whatever, right? That guy would get fired, but whatever. He ends the day at that. 45, 10, and 1. The next day he does 23, 5, and 1. Or the next day he does 50. And then over the course of 5, 6, 700 calls, right? Whether that takes you 2 days or whether that takes you 2 months, it doesn't really matter. Over the course of 5, 6, 700 calls, you're going to know how many contacts it's going to take for you to get the number of pitches off that you need, to get the number of closed sales that you need so that you stay true with these numbers. Does that make sense? So this is going to change over the course of time as you figure it out. Now, if you already know, if you've been on the phone already for years, and for some of you for a week, right? It doesn't really matter. It's the number of calls that count. So if you've been on the phone for 1,000 calls, right, or 2,000 calls selling the same thing, and you know that your closing ratio is 30%, well, then change that number. I'll give you one little hint, though. This number matters so much more than this one does, right? So I have a calculator. I don't have it open in front of me, but I have a calculator that will show you this. So basically, if you increase the number of pitches, like contacts to connection ratio, right? So if I dial the phone 100 times and I get 10 people on the phone, that's terrible. And then if I close 10%, I got to make a lot of dials. But if I get that 100 up instead of 10, if I get that 100 into 50, so 100 dials equals 50 contacts or 50 like people on the phone. If I do that, these numbers go down like substantially, like really, really quickly, okay? If you increase your closing ratio, though, they don't go down as much. So the best way to improve or lower your workload, right, or make it easier for you, is to increase your contact ratio, not your closing ratio. Okay, so that's one thing you want to keep in mind. All right, the number of people that you actually get on the phone is much more important, or the number of people that you knock on the door and they answer, or the number of people that you sign up for a webinar that actually show up. Right? Your show up rate increases. Your closing ratio could stay the same. If your show up rate increases, you got to get less people on. That's just the way it works. Okay. So, again, that's the one. If there's one thing you're going to focus on, it's that. Improve that number more than this number. That's why I always say to people, with me, yes, I teach people how to close deals. Yes, I teach people how to handle objections and all those types of things. But the bottom line is my bread and butter is I don't know who you are. I'll at least listen to you. If we get people from I don't know who you are to I'll at least listen to you, which is right there, this number goes down a lot, right? If this number here goes from 10 to 30, that's almost going to be cut in half. Not really going to be cut in half, but it'll go down to like 300 calls just by upping this by 20%. Now that may seem like a lot, and it is a lot. But that could just, remember, this is just contacts, right? That could be changing your lead source. That could be, if you're running Facebook ads or something, that could be changing your audience or changing the ad that you have or whatever, right? It could be a number of different things. It's not necessarily you dialing more or calling more people or, whatever, knocking on more doors. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that you just changed the lead source. You didn't even change your pitch. You just changed your lead source, and that number substantially went up because a bad batch of leads can kill this number. Right? We have to keep that in mind. So that's something we definitely have to look at. So a simple path to $1 million, very simple. Pick your goal, which is $1 million. And remember, you can do this with anything. You want to do this with $100,000 a year? Well, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. Just put $100,000 up here and work the numbers backwards. Okay? Goal is $1 million. Average ticket is $1,000. Sales needed is $1,000. Closing ratio, 10%. You know what? To make this less confusing for you, I'm just going to put closing ratio. We use pitches off here, but you can put whatever you want. Closing ratio, 10%. Contacts, 10%. 100,000 contacts, 10,000 pitches off at a closing ratio of 10%. Then you have 1,000 sales at $1,000. I don't know why that stupid thing keeps coming up, but it's driving me nuts. 10,000 at 10% is 1,000 sales, which will equal $1 million at $1,000 a piece. Very, very simple, guys. It's not that hard. Now, at the end of the day, what does this come down? What is this all about, right? What this is all about is you're going to buckle down and discipline yourself to make 416 contacts a day. It's as simple as that, right? That's what it comes down to. If you know your closing ratio, if you know the amount of people you get on the phone based on the number of people you call, or the number of people that come into your dealership, that talk to you, or the number of people on a webinar, whatever it is, the number of people on your sales page, it doesn't really matter what this number is. It's the number of people that you reach out to and see your message, and as opposed to the people that actually listen to you, right? So if that number is 10%, 20%, 30%, 50%, whatever it is, put that in there. If all these numbers stay true, and they should if you know what you're doing, this number is going to equal this amount of money. Like it's, again, it's not going to be 1,000 on the nose on December 31st. It's going to be right around there, though. It's going to be very, very close. And like I said, I've done this hundreds of times with clients of mine and my own businesses. And when you talk about salespeople that I worked with and coaching students and stuff, thousands and thousands of times. The number's not always $1 million. The number is whatever they want it to be, whatever the goal is for them, right? It's not always $1 million, but I've worked this out with people over the past 20 years, thousands of times, and it's shockingly accurate when you actually know the numbers behind what it is that you're doing. So the big question now is, how do you know the numbers, right? How do I know 10% here? How do I know 10% here? How do I figure that out? I'm brand new, right? How do I figure that out? Well, the answer to that question is you get a product, whatever that product is. Could be a white label SEO thing. It could be you go get a job at a car dealership, or you go get a job at a real estate. Those people are always hiring. It's a sales thing, right? You can always get a job somewhere and sell stuff. It doesn't really matter. What you do is you get a job doing it, and then you figure out, listen, I'm going to make 1,000 calls. I'm not going to do any of this for the first 1,000, right? I'm just going to barrel through 1,000 calls. I'm going to keep track of it all using something like this. Okay, now there's probably more fancy stuff you could do online now, but that's stupid. This is easy. You just put it on a piece of paper and you just check them off as you go. Okay, I'm going to make 1,000 calls, and I'm going to see what my closing ratio is over 1,000 calls. I'm going to see if I dial the phone 1,000 times, if I knock on 1,000 doors, if 1,000 people come into my dealership, if 1,000 people come into my real estate office, if 1,000 people come into my store, whatever, how many of those people go from, I don't know who you are, to I'll at least sit down and listen and hear what you have to say? That's your contact ratio, right? So that's going to be whatever it is, over 1,000 calls, 1,000 knocks, 1,000 people you talk to, 1,000 people on a webinar, registrations, whatever. What is that number? And then you're going to figure it out. It's not about changing them. It's about figuring out accurately what they are. Once you figure out accurately what they are, then you just figure out the numbers that you have to do in order to hit your yearly goal. Then once you do that, then you work on improving this first. Okay, now I understand that being a closer is like the cool thing, right? You got to put the stupid little Q-tip earbuds in. Oh, yeah, man, I have Justin Bieber haircut. I'm going to teach you how to close deals because I smoke weed all day and have Q-tips in my ear. This is fine. I get it. Mathematically, it's stupid. If you want to work on being a closer, a closing machine, you want to do that with the earbuds in your ear. That's fine. You can. Mathematically, it's dumb. It doesn't make any sense to do that, okay? Now, I'm not saying that after you've got your contact ratio up to a respectable number, that working on closing deals at a higher clip is bad. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is working on this before you work on this mathematically is dumb, and you're creating more work for yourself. Because if you up this number, again, like I said before, if you bring this to 30%, this number drops substantially. Like ridiculously, okay? If you bring this up to 30% and you leave this at 10%, this number doesn't move. Not that it doesn't move, but it barely moves. Like this maybe will go to 370 or something. But if you bring the 30 down here and you leave that at 10, this number is going to go down to the 300s, low 300s. Okay, so we want to lower the workload. We want to make it easier for ourselves. How do we do that? We focus on getting our I don't know you to I'll at least listen to you, aka the contact ratio, up as high as we possibly can before we focus on closing deals. Okay, so we want to get people on the phone. We want to get people who register for the webinar. We want to get them on the webinar. To people, when we knock on the door, we want them to answer the door, right? So this could be changing your pitch, but most of the time it's not going to be, especially if you work in a place that's respectable and they know what they're doing and they've been doing it for a long time. Their pitch probably works fine. The same thing is true as if you're your own business, right? If you're your own business, you're taking a little sales training, you have a pitch down and it's working for you, that's fine. You don't have to change it. It could be a change in lead source, could be a change in audience, could be a change in your ad, it could be a change in a number of different things. But the bottom line is we want to focus almost all of our energy here before we move on to here. Another way to put this here, watch, what we call the pipeline, right? We want to get as many people into the pipeline as possible. We don't have to worry in the beginning. I'll take 10%. I'll take 5%. Doesn't really matter. As long as I'm getting a really good percentage of people to say, I don't know you, I'll at least listen to you. That's putting them in the pipeline, getting them started along some sort of process. If I could just do that, I would rather do that at a 30% clip than close 30% of the people that are in my pipeline. Because I don't have any people in my pipeline if I'm at 10%, right? So we want to focus here all of our energy first. This right here, most important thing in the world. That's what you want to focus on first. Increase this number. Do whatever you can to increase that number. And then after you've gotten that to 30, 40%, then you want to start working on this. Okay? So that is the simple plan or simple path to $1 million. And remember, this number can be anything. It doesn't have to be $1 million. So if that number scares you, it shouldn't really, because as you could see here, it's really not that hard to do. But it takes discipline. That's really all it takes, because any living human being can make 416 dials a day on a telephone, or get 416 people to click on their registration page or whatever. Anyone can do that. It's not that hard to do. It's just a matter of, are you willing to do it? It's not that it doesn't work. It's just it's math, right? It has to work. It's a mathematical equation. It's, are you willing to actually do the work behind it in order to achieve what you want to achieve? And that's a question that you have to answer. I can't answer that for you, but it's very hard to say the math doesn't work. The math is right in front of you. It's pretty basic. So if this number scares you, you can lower it. $100,000, $500,000. The math is going to stay the same. Just work the formula down, and you're going to figure out exactly how many people you have to touch every single day to hit your income goal. Okay, so that is all for this video and this podcast. If you're listening to it on the podcast, you definitely want to go to kennycannonpodcast.com/YT so you can actually see what I'm doing here. But that's pretty much it. All right, guys, thanks for listening and watching on YouTube. If you are on the podcast, make sure you subscribe anywhere where podcasts are played or wherever you listen to it. I don't know the name of them all, but iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, SoundCloud, all those places. You can leave us a review. You can leave us a comment. Same thing on YouTube. You can click the subscribe button. You click the bell so you're notified when we release a new video. And you could put your comments below to let us know if you like this, if you didn't like it, if you have any questions about it or anything like that. I know the question that I'm going to get is like, can I download this form that you're working on? The answer to that question is no, because this form is a blank Word document that I just wrote stuff on that you can very easily copy right off of the screen right now. So just do some work and just get, instead of watching, just do something, and you'll get a lot more out of it if you just do it yourself as opposed to me giving it to you. So I'm not like going to sit here and tell you to put an email address in to get something that I just typed up in Word for 5 seconds. You could do it yourself in your own Word document or Google Doc or whatever, and it's really not that big of a deal. Okay, so type this out yourself, do the math, and then get to work. All right, so that is all for today. If you guys need anything, you can let us know.